we come close to the hour of mercy on this Friday, we ask the Lord to inspire us with thoughts of wisdom as we listen attentively to His Word, and apply the message that He gives us ourselves and those that He asks us eventually to serve in His mystical body, the Church. In Psalm 37 or 36, whichever one wants to count it, we have this important verse, which is important for us as we come close to the end of the retreat, which prepares us, as it were, for the beginning. It's in verse 7 we have, "Stay quiet before the Lord, wait longingly for Him." And then we have further on in the same psalm, it's in verse 30, "Wisdom comes from the lips of the upright, and his tongue speaks what is right." Of course, that gives us the introduction, the introit to one of the most commonly used introits of the Gregorian, Os Justi. The law of his God is in his heart, his foot will never slip. This attitude of waiting for a word is fundamental in our life if we are not to get in the way. The Lord knows the needs of the souls in front of us, and so who better to give the word and therefore the healing than the Lord Himself? And we too need to be fed. It is an error, unfortunately an illness, in the ministerial priesthood in the West that there is undernourishment in the hearts, minds and souls of many of His ministers. They have not time. Parce anime tue, have mercy on your own soul, be merciful to your own soul. We once, actually, in the diocese, which is a big diocese in Ireland, Meath, in the centre, had a whole session for all the priests of the diocese aimed at taking care of the priest. It's often forgotten about. But that care, if it is not essentially, in the first place, spiritual, is, again, cosmetic. So we need to make sure that we're in good trim. This waiting then for a word directly from the Lord can only be safeguarded by a minimal structure in which the Lord has His time. I picked this up again, which in times past has helped me to see what we're up against. Indeed, all those who take seriously the ministerial priesthood will come up against it. The more they do so, the more they will come up against it. The fact that they are being attacked, and therefore if that happens, it's a good sign. There is a famous case of unwilling manifestation of the strategy of the demons in the quite dramatic series of exorcisms in Germany in the mid-70s. Annalisa Michael, as a young lassie. It came then known in the world as the exorcism of Emily Rose, but the real name is German. And she became known because of the way that the priests, family, whatever involved, came to the public eye and were accused of not having looked after her, and she had died of malnutrition, but of course it was quite demonic. Anyway, what is interesting is that the conversations in these sessions were all put on magnetic tape and are still there. Evidence of what, under pressure, the demons were obliged to say against their own ploy. And it is interesting because right now, in hindsight, one can see why the Lord did allow this for His greater glory and our own spiritual well-being, that we need to be aware that the Catholic Church is the true church, but the devil knows it too. And therefore it's there that he attacks with great skill. In the past he's done it, as we know, historically, by initially a great division which has still not been healed, although Pope Benedict did try to get some kind of accord on in writing. He has written and made known this kind of solution for unity again with the Eastern Bloc. I haven't studied it, I haven't actually read it, but I do know that he was trying his best as Pope to get through, because he was aware that it was now 2 millennia, and it was 1 millennium too much. So it hasn't succeeded, partly because it's more difficult to dialogue with some of them than with us, because they have things like Mount Athos, and that is pretty resistant. So it's not going to be easy. However, these great pontiffs have been aware of it. John Paul II used to talk about the Church breathing again with its 2 lungs. Of course, our own present Pope now has been recently, hasn't he, to Istanbul. And he interestingly wanted the blessing of the Patriarch. He was very humble. He has a language of his own, which everyone understands. Now, lots of puzzling things have come out of this series of exorcism, and some quite specific. In the beginning of 1976, this was in the month of January where we are now, this came out. Father Arnold was addressing these demons, or this demon. You are guilty, responsible for heresies. For example, Kuhn. Now isn't he Dutch? Hans Kuhn.
No.
He's German, is he?
Oh, Swiss.
That's right, Tübingen. That's what he's Swiss. He's still around, isn't he? Oh, he was given a chair of philosophy or something instead of theology. Yes, says Lucifer himself here, and many others as well. So, you see, there's there more than meets the eye. That actually is quite interesting, because what's happening is that the demon, we have this also from other exorcisms, he's making use of those who are influential within the structure. That's how he operates. He's very clever. So we have to be aware of that sometimes people of great influence are being used, and therefore they're going to make it difficult sometimes for priests who want to be faithful and orthodox. It's a difficult situation one is in. There's an interesting question here, says the exorcist, and this went back to the 70s now when things weren't quite so clear, and Bishop Lefebvre, question mark. That one. But they don't believe in him. Alas. But actually, this dialogue goes on actually, because it's translated in Italian here, peccato, means pity. And the exorcist picks it up. Who's saying pity? I am not, and Lucifer replies, I'm not. Anyway. He mentions how he was involved with the Curé Vars, trying his best to make a nuisance of himself, to make things uncomfortable for the Curé Vars, and how efficacious the Curé Vars was in snatching stones from him. But the demon is obliged to say that he was only allowed to go as far as his chains allowed, like a tene. In other words, he is chained, he can't do more than he has permission to do, but he can make a nuisance of himself, putting his fire in flames, his bed in flames, that kind of thing. Now, here we have another of the exorcists engaging. This is Father Prince. Later, actually, this is earlier, this was in September of 1975. And here come out a series of interesting things regarding changes. The demon here, and actually this particular demon is a human demon, it's Judas himself, and apparently Judas, this comes out, has got so close to the boss, out of envy and hatred, that he, it seems, goes around and he sort of helps the demon in tempting, and even in tempting priests apparently leaves. A strange kettle of fish. There's a whole lot in the world we don't understand. But anyway, Judas is lost. Judas Iscariot. He was a priest and a bishop, and he therefore has this complete horror of those who make it when he's lost it. And this therefore would be his voice in exorcism. That thing that you are wearing, he's referring here to the clerical dress, the soutane. Most of them don't wear it anymore. These modernists are my work, and they all henceforth are mine. They don't obey the Pope of Rome, and yet it is that one in Rome who holds the Church together. I think this encyclical is referred to here as Humanae Vitae. That encyclical has been useful for nothing, completely useful. This question of the hypocrisy, what happened then was more one meets the eye, because I've heard that was the point at which disobedience started to become a part of the Catholic scene after Humanae Vitae. There was independent thinking which came in at that point. Now, nuns in monasteries, this is still apparently Judas talking under pressure, are in front of the television and don't pray enough, and they don't kneel, and they put out their paws. He's referring here, those two, to the way in which already there in 1975, when he was coming in to some countries, it wasn't at all mentioned in Britain yet at that stage, but it was coming in, I presume, to Germany, Holland and France, wasn't it, already by 1975? Because Paul VI, yes, he had to react against it, didn't he, in around that time. It was around that time he wrote an encyclical teaching, didn't he, about it, and he was trying to stop it from spreading, basically. It didn't work. The same theme here, they all do this, they're all up to it, from the bishop to the parish priest, and even so-and-so, we don't know who's referring to, lets them stand on their feet, and he gives it to them on their paws. Here the devil laughs and makes devilish noises. And we must remember that some of the words have to be censored in exorcism, because the devil does use bad words. The parish priests, the priests are all like this, bestially stupid. They're all goaded on by me. In fact, I am the betrayer, and the great majority of them are just like me. Yes, indeed, they too betray the Nazarene. Again, there's a reference to the Holy Father. That one up there, he's referring to the Pope, he's the one who holds the church up. The others don't follow him, don't obey him. They all want to be modern. And here, now there's a warning, because it's coming from underneath, to us all. The parish priests, the priests, pray too little. They sit before that and it's censored, whatever the word is, it's into the box anyway, the goggle box. Instead of adoring it, he's referring here to the Blessed Sacrament, it's the new tabernacle, the television. Now, of course, there's a whole new world, isn't there, the cybersphere. I have a whole multitude of them tagged on to me. If they only believed in that one up there, that is, referring to the Pope, it would be much better. They all do as their own head tells them to do. And then they think they're clever. Now here's something very specific. The Rosary, they don't believe it to be modern. The parish priest of somewhere, whatever it is, doesn't even say it. He says the Rosary once a week, and he thinks he has done a miracle just by having done that. Every day? No. If only that one up there, he's referring to the Madonna, our Blessed Lady, didn't exist. They hate the Madonna with perfect hatred, we know that. And the Rosary too, they can't bear to see it in people's hands. The simple people have been trying always to get that instrument out of the hands of the little people. And by the way, it's that kept the practice of the faith alive in penal times in Ireland quite often. They only had that. And for generations, the Rosary was said in practically all the families of Ireland in the night. Now it's very difficult because the television is on. There's a reference here to the Dutch Catechism. The Libraccio, that's a bad way of saying word, the horrible book. And he says this with a demonic laughing, scoffing. That they have written, that's the Dutch bishops, is cursed. And on it goes. It's easy now on that one because we have the proper version, universal version of the Catechism, and it's readable, and one can always make appeal to it because it's there and it's user-friendly. And also very balanced, there's nothing extreme. It tries to attack everything in a very contemporary and lucid way, in touch with the past. Films are bad, and television is not much better. Now, this question of the use of modern media is something that, of course, has to attack and is having people immersed in them. Their life is full of them in the evening. Now, more than ever, maturity is required because there are useful bits around and they're available in different forms. What one can't safely watch is live television because it's not filtered and one doesn't know what's going to come up, and one also has to see things in between, like adverts. But it's quite different if one has a DVD which is specifically given for a specific reason. Or if one goes on a specific search on the cybersphere, wanting a historical document on a specific theme, then one can watch a carefully selected YouTube, which is usually very well done if it's documentary, and learn a lot in a short time, more than one would in the equivalent time with a book. It's done for you. So that's intelligent use of time and what is out there. What is not advisable is passive letting it happen. That is a different dynamic, and it's not the same because we're not in control and it's actually quite lazy. So time goes and we go with wherever we're being led, and it takes away the taste of other things. That's the problem. It has a deep effect on the soul and also weakens the mind. It's no longer then able to settle to a quiet book. On the 7th of October, as it happens, the Feast of Our Lady of the Rosary, in 1975. We have this coming out in Exorcism. The altar rails hardly exist anymore in any church. In fact, I was puzzled not that long ago, reading that in the Missal, which has been published officially for Britain, the introduction does indicate that the norm for receiving Holy Communion in the parts of the world under the Episcopal Conference is standing. Now, that has actually gone a stage further, because you see, there's no question of making that the norm. It's a mission, and then to make it the norm is actually to go beyond, and is actually to take away legitimate choice. One talks nowadays about choice, liberty. Well, actually, one is limiting one's liberty by such a declaration. The month of the Rosary. Very few indeed say it, because the Lord parish priests don't hold it to be modern. How thick they are. If only they had some idea. Because this, talking about the Rosary, is a strong weapon against Satan and against us. I have to admit it, but few believe it. Now, we have a few other human demons appearing in this session. Here we have another one coming on board, Nero. He says the Dutch bishops are heretical. They have become unfaithful to the Pope. Another one here, Sunday. On Sunday, it is nice to be in bed. That delights me. Nero again. This is a puzzling one. The altar turned round to face the people comes from those of the other side. This, we have done it ourselves. They have run after the evangelicals, just like so many harlots. A harlot is an adulterer, it's a prostitute. By order of the chief, he's referring to Lucifer. Here's an interesting one. Catholics have the true doctrine and they run after the Protestants, like prostitutes, like harlots. Catholics throw the doctrine of the truth to the swine, to the pigs. Let them eat it. This is interesting, very modern. Synods. And here we have a satanic guffaw, scoffing. Right. There, in the synods, one carries on chattering. Bishops know what they have to do. They will not need synods if they followed the Pope. He must be talking about local synods rather than big ones. But it says a lot, actually, about meetings. A lot of that happens. Wasting more precious time for that kind of thing. But for them, the Pope is un deficiente, a
thick head. And it is they, the bishops, who allow that thing, the host, to be received in the hand. There's a question here about exorcism itself. Lucifer himself says this. You have the power to chase us out, to get rid of us, but most of them don't make any use of it. In fact, it's very difficult to get hold of a proper exorcism nowadays. There's a question here of what's going on in the teaching of the doctrine of the Church. Lucifer himself indicates that there's falsification going on. It happens usually not directly but indirectly. We have a lot of people in Ireland find that a lot of airtime is given to a certain type, for instance, of representative of the Church, people who would have ideas not exactly in conformity with the Church, and so that's the message that people get massively. Here we have, in this same series, this is coming out on the 27th of October 1975, it's a human demon, this one, it's a certain priest, Father Fleischmann. He comes up with things which are a warning to priests. He refers to the way that hosts are easily got hold of and desecrated as a result of their being given in the hand. Lucifer comes on the conversation here, same question. Particles are taken and profanated a lot. This is our great entertainment, causing pain to Nazarene and to his mother. Responsibility for this is borne by bishops and parish priests. The bishop, because he has permitted it, and then he wants obedience. And Lucifer himself comes out with this. Many priests find themselves in a situation of unease with their conscience for this very thing. From one side, they have to obey bishop, and from the other, the voice of their conscience. Judas comes out with the question of hell, how it is hidden. Even in the tradition, I don't know what you have in Holland, but it's a question of translation there of the creed itself. He descended into hell, that was watered down. We have it in England, I don't know what goes on in that here, but apparently this question there, the hell very much exists and it's not being talked about at all. And so on it goes. Interestingly enough, another human demon who comes in is Cain, which indicates, therefore, that he existed as a human person. And therefore, this ancient tradition, which comes back down from prehistory, is based on what did happen at the starting off of our human family. So there's no smoke without fire. It helps us to understand that original sin was actually very concrete, and it is handed on. And Cain was the first to mess things up on a personal level after the original fall. He didn't make it afterwards. Another one who has come out is Hitler, he didn't make it either, which is quite frightening. Apparently they know exactly how he died. There was some question of it for a while, even now some people question it, but the communists tortured people who were close to him at the end to get a clear version. They both had cyanide. He tried out the cyanide on his faithful dog first, who died. Then Eva Braun, whom he was married just the previous night, she took the cyanide and died. There was no need for a bullet there, but he did apparently the two things simultaneously, cyanide and a bullet straight away. So if he didn't make it, that meant that he thought, of course, that he was cancelling everything, but it was going from one pain to another. It's quite a frightening thing when one thinks about it. The way of ending one's life without a chance for reflection, because that kind of death, there's very little time between the moment of committing the act and its consequence. Because we know that Curé Mars, he did say once or twice with people in distress, for instance, there was one person who threw himself from the bridge, he said to the widow he had actually time to make an act of contrition between the bridge and the water, and he was saved because of that. But suicide now is very à la mode, and lots of young people keep it as a valid alternative. There are even methods on internet how to do it. On it goes, it catches on. I was talking to somebody, he came to my hermitage actually. He had been in prison, and he was involved actually with the riots in Mount Joy prison. It was all happening there, but he was moved to a more secure prison, I think, after that. And but in there were all kinds of people, and I believe there was one IRA person who talked to him and warned him not to commit suicide if that should ever come to him, because it was well known that the temptation was there to shorten the sentence. And he was quite puzzled, and apparently the faith that this IRA man had still said it's a great offence to him, you see, so there was something there, at least that made him think. And there was a series of people in the prison committing suicide precisely, and it was catching on. And at one point, this person who came to me, he heard a voice. What did he know? He did, yes, he heard a voice. It was actually heard. It wasn't just imagination, it was something. It was to end it all, end this sentence with a quick suicide. And also, with that sound, this voice, whatever it was, there was a feeling coming of well-being around it. It was made to feel tantalizing and agreeable and blissful. But then he remembered this other word, and he resisted. And he asked this presence, "Are you the one who pushed these others to commit suicide?" Yes! So he coughed on, because it became a very unpleasant sound then, and he realized what was going on. So he courageously said to this presence, whatever it was, "Give me an hour, I'll think about it." So anyway, the presence went away and left him in peace for the time being. And in that time, the first time in his life, he turned to serious prayer.
Wow.
And he was given, at that point, because he turned in serious prayer, a very powerful grace. And it wasn't just any grace, but he was given a grace of infused knowledge of the faith. Instantly he understood the Catholic faith in its plenitude. He was just given straight away to understand the fullness. It was all there. And it was enough then for him to get into the proper stream, to get the sacraments, and to get on to better behaviour, and to be released from prison eventually before the end of his term. And he got involved then with evangelization work with the Legion of Mary, which is a very good organisation, and he knew where these people were coming from. He'd been there, and he wasn't afraid there at the main street of Dublin, O'Connell Street, where all the people come shopping, to be handing out tracts, pamphlets, whatever. And he could see people coming that he knew, who had been gangsters and all the rest of it. And he saw coming this chap who had been in an opposing gang, and he was into all kinds of things. And he saw him coming, and he had the courage to go up to him and You're going to hell. I know. There's nothing much I can do about it. Ciao. And off he went with himself. He wouldn't let him go, he went after him, got him to talk. So anyway, because he was one of them, he could get through to him. And so anyway, he calmed him down. See, the faith is in Ireland, it's strange kettle of fish, Ireland. These people, they have the faith, you see, underneath. It's a bizarre situation. Yeah. So anyway, he started talking to him. I better contact someone. So anyway, he got on his mobile phone and got on to a priest he knew in Bachelor's Walk down his pet renovation there in the middle of Dublin. There's always a priest stays here. Come this way, I've got a candidate for you. So anyway, he sort of got confession, absolute, and all the rest of it. And another time, there was somebody, he picked up on the grapevine with the underground network that there was a gang going to get another chap, you see. So off he went himself, he found he knew where he was and got him. Yeah, I warn you, they're going to get you. So, who cares? So anyway, there's not much you can do about it. He was going to stay put, he knew it was a risk. So anyway, that's the case. Do you mind if I contact somebody I know? Some priest came along, you see. I chat with him. Look, hey, absolution. Okay, what is absolution? A fortnight later, he was dead. We got him. These underground vendettas, you see. Yeah. But the other chap knew all about it. I mean, serious stuff out there. But he died with the sacrament. So anyway, God is concerned about these souls. All that I got onto because of the question of suicide, and it's true. These people, if you listen to what they say, there was a case there was a bridge where there had been a series of young people committing suicide at the same spot, throwing themselves off the railway line, and they eventually got a fifth person who was about to do the same thing, and they stopped her and asked, could you feel something pulling you there? Yes, there was something pulling me there. In other words, there was a demonic force. And so young people have to be warned about these things because suicide is a supreme victory of the demon. Nero again, people should go to confession. And again, the Catholic teaching should be proclaimed without falsification. And so, the doctrine on the Eucharist and the Immaculate Conception. Yes, says Lucifer on another occasion, or maybe the same, the Lord parish priests should say of me that I exist. Otherwise, they'll all go down. The lady, they never use her name, forces me always because she wants to save even bad-willed people. But she's not able to do everything. Because not enough explanation is given. In other words, people are not aware. Candidates to the priesthood, says Lucifer himself, should pray. And they should be formed in their own seminaries. That's interesting. No, they should not frequent other universities. See, that's obviously something which is weakening the formation, that they're all the time with secular candidates, and it's a different mentality out there. We still have in Italy some minor seminaries. That means you get children and they are kept clean. Most people should go to the priest when they are sick, says this lost priest Fleischmann. This is the order of the High Lady, I didn't use the word. So in other words, the question of priest going to a person rather than a layman comes into it. The people who are ill, they may get all kinds of care on the outside, or even psychological care, but the last thing thought about is the eternal welfare of the soul, and that's, in the long run, what matters. And so, quality time given to these people is not indifferent. I'll just finish with one story. It's true, but it says it all. with regard to the zeal for souls in actually modern times. It's recent, this one. The oratory, which came from St. Philip Neri, formed centres of prayer and beauty, but also great pastors of souls. And it's one of the movements which actually is on the increase. They started off with Birmingham, then they had London, then they had Manchester, now they have Oxford, and there may be another one coming. Anyway, the thing is, it is growing because they're faithful to the Lord, and the Lord is able to bless them and they get good young vocations. But one good example of a pastor of souls was Father Patrick in the London Oratory. He would go around hospitals looking for Catholics who might be on the brink, and so he found this person who had RC on his thing, so he must be some kind of Catholic, so off he went to have a chat with him. I left the church here, I'm wasting your time. You know your situation, so you're wasting your time. Do you realise, my friend, that you might not have an awful lot to live? I don't care, let's do that distance, I left the church ages ago, go away. Fully aware of your state. I don't care, I tell you to go away. Listening, leave me in peace. Still don't see him. He wasn't in a hurry to go away. He doesn't look at him. He looked at him. Why do you stay away? I tell you to go away. What are you doing here? Look into his eyes. I'm looking at you, sir. Because never in my life have I ever before looked into the eyes of a person who's going to hell. With that, he walked off, you see, to the door. He was getting to the door. Come back to me! And he came back, you see, and heard his confession. So that was the end of that. And all eternity was